It is February 1940. Following the Battle of the River Plate and the sinking of the Admiral Graf Spee, the auxiliary vessel Altmark, under the command of Captain Heinrich Dow, in an attempt to return to Germany, Dow took his ship through the Atlantic and passed east of Iceland, making it to the relative safety of Norwegian territorial waters on the 14th. On board the Altmark was nearly 300 British prisoners from the various merchant ships the Admiral Graf Spee had sunk during the Panzerschiff's raiding mission between August and December of 1939. Within several days of the Altmark's arrival in Norwegian waters, the Royal Navy put a plan in motion to rescue the prisoners aboard the auxiliary ship, and in a callback to the age of Nelson and Drake, the Altmark would be boarded by the men of HMS Cossack, with the German auxiliary ship being ran aground and the prisoners rescued. Please watch until the end of the video, as there are several announcements regarding the video in the channel. On the 14th, Altmark was visited by Norwegian authorities for a cursory inspection courtesy of a vessel out of Trondheim. The Norwegians, although suspicious of Dow's story and cargo, allowed the Altmark to proceed along the coast under naval escort. The following day, on the 15th, as Altmark made its way down the Norwegian coast, it approached the restricted area around Bergen, which under neutrality regulations, merchant ships were allowed to sail through, but warships were not. She was inspected further by Norwegian authorities, and Dow explained that his ship had participated in exercises in the Atlantic and was heading back to Germany with a cargo of oil from Port Arthur, Texas, and that the ship carried 20mm anti-aircraft guns, which had been stowed away before entering Norwegian territorial waters, so he could claim sanctuary as a merchant ship in neutral waters. Trying to figure out the status of Altmark as either a merchantman or a belligerent warship put Rear Admiral Karsten Tank Nielsen, the commander of Norway's 2nd Naval District, in quite the pickle. If Altmark was a merchant ship, she had the right to sail through. If not, she had to go around. To make sure, the Norwegian destroyer Garm, with Tank Nielsen aboard in company with the mine layer Olav Tryggvason, intercepted Altmark with her escort, the torpedo boat Snog. Norwegian officers boarded Altmark and asked if there were prisoners on board, and Dow responded that there were not. They also informed Dow that he either had to submit to a search or he would not be allowed to pass through. Dow claimed that he was a naval auxiliary vessel and therefore did not have to submit to a search. He was then ordered out to sea and to take his ship around the restricted area. During the conference, Altmark's radio operator sent a report to the German embassy in Oslo. The Norwegian naval communicators intercepted the radio message and prevented it from reaching the embassy. Dow was informed that he should not use his radio while inside Norwegian waters. He apologized and requested that his report be sent to the German embassy in Oslo. This was done, and Altmark, in company with Norwegian vessels, withdrew from the restricted area to await the response from the German embassy. Garm, one of the vessels that accompanied Altmark out to sea, claimed that SOS whistle signals were heard from the German ship, and that the Germans had started the onboard cranes to drown out the noise. Tank Nielsen sent a message at 3:54 p.m. to the Norwegian naval staff that reads, "The ship has refused supplemental visitation, and its passage through the restricted area has been denied. Probably prisoners aboard. Inform the Commander-in-Chief." It soon arrived in the hands of the Commander-in-Chief of the Norwegian Navy, as well as the Foreign Office, and they were eager to get the German vessel on its way at once and out of their territorial waters, as it was potentially dangerous, ordering Tank Nielsen to allow Altmark to pass through and to provide an escort. The reports from the destroyer Garm did not reach the Commander-in-Chief until later, although it would not have persuaded his decision. Meanwhile, the British had gotten wind that Altmark was in Norwegian waters. This caused an immediate response from the Admiralty under the First Lord, Winston Churchill. Understanding that merchant seamen were the lifeblood of the battle for the Atlantic, and several experienced sailors could be rescued and who could prove critical. In addition, it prevented the German government from claiming any more victories from the Admiral Graf Spee. If the rescue attempt was successful, it could prove a significant morale booster. Acting quickly, Churchill ordered Dudley Pound to arrest Altmark in territorial waters should she be found. The ship is violating neutrality and carrying British prisoners of war to Germany. The Altmark must be regarded as an invaluable trophy. Reconnaissance aircraft located Altmark in Norwegian territorial waters south of Stavanger on the 16th, where the escorting patrol boat Fyren, not having anti-aircraft guns, flashed the British aircraft that they were violating Norwegian airspace. The Royal Navy was putting a flotilla together of 6 ships under the command of Captain Vian of HMS Cossack. Cossack was put to sea on the 14th with their sister ships Maori, Sikh, Nubian, and two I-class destroyers Intrepid and Ivanhoe, as well as the light cruiser Arethusa. The force was officially sent to intercept German iron ore ships in the Skagerrak, being a well-armed and capable force for such a mission. It was further supplemented by having the influenza-affected crewmen replaced with crew from HMS Aurora, being organized into boarding parties. Vian swept through the Baltic and then northward, hoping to cut Altmark off from a direct route to Germany. The force was split up to search for Altmark. Altmark would be spotted being escorted by the Norwegian torpedo boat Skarv outside Jasingfjord, halfway between Jørgensen and Flekkefjord. At first, the British vessel stopped short of Norwegian waters and signaled to Altmark to proceed on a westerly course out of Norwegian waters. Altmark ignored this request. HMS Intrepid and Ivanhoe entered Norwegian waters despite the protest of the Norwegian torpedo boat. The vessels jockeyed for position, with Ivanhoe trying to position herself to block Altmark, but the Skarv took up a position between the two ships and went to call on Ivanhoe. Altmark slowed down and a boat launched from Ivanhoe to board the auxiliary vessel, leading to the commander of Skarv to protest the British breach of Norwegian neutrality, which was met by the curt response of Ivanhoe's captain, saying he had his orders. In the meantime, Dow, seeing how if he continued on his path, he would be captured by the British, he made the decision to make a hard turn to port and enter Jasingfjord, hoping that the Norwegian vessels blocked the approach of any British ships. This occurred when a second Norwegian torpedo boat, Kjell, took up a position in between the British force and the entrance to Jasingfjord. This was a dangerous situation, as 6 modern British destroyers could easily overwhelm the 2 Norwegian torpedo boats. However, the sinking of a Norwegian naval vessel within territorial waters would probably lead to war with Norway. In his book, Tribals, Battles, and Darings, The Genesis of the Modern Destroyer, Dr. Alexander Clark describes the first 3 articles from Treaty 13 of the 1907 Hague Convention, which pertains to the situation here. Article 1. Belligerents are bound to respect the sovereign rights of neutral powers and to abstain in neutral territory or neutral waters from any act which would, if knowingly permitted by any power, constitute a violation of neutrality. Article 2. Any act of hostility, including the capture and the exercise of the right of search, committed by belligerent warships in the territorial waters of a neutral power, constitutes a violation of neutrality and is strictly forbidden. Article 3. When a ship has been captured in the territorial waters of a neutral power, this power must employ, if the prize is still within its jurisdiction, the means at its disposal to release the prize with its officers and crew and to intern the prize crew. In 1940, the Royal Navy was bound to follow these rules, and to complete the mission, the Navy would have to violate at least 2 out of the 3. Norwegian and British officers tried to work something out. Lieutenant Halvorsen, Kiel's commander, was the senior-most Norwegian officer on the scene and met on board Cossack with Vian. The two discussed how Altmark carried British prisoners, which Halvorsen responded that he did not know of any prisoners. He maintained, even if that was the case, the British had no right to violate Norwegian neutrality and demanded the British force depart as quickly as possible from the area to avoid serious consequences. Vian suggested that British and Norwegian officers search Altmark, with the Norwegians turning down this suggestion since allowing any foreign naval officer to inspect a ship in Norwegian waters was an infringement on the nation's sovereignty. During these discussions, both the Norwegians and the British received orders from their superiors. The Norwegians were ordered to oppose any attempt to seize Altmark with force, while Vian got an order from Churchill, which reads as follows from Hitler's preemptive war, The Battle for Norway, 1940, by Henrik Lund. Unless Norwegian torpedo boat undertakes to convoy Altmark to Bergen with a joint Anglo-Norwegian guard on board and joint escort, you should board Altmark, liberate the prisoners, and take possession of the ship pending further instructions. If Norwegian torpedo boat interferes, you should warn her to stand off. If she fires upon you, you should not reply unless the attack is serious, in which case you should defend yourself, using no more force than is necessary, and ceasing fire when she desists. Having received this order from Churchill, Vian entered the fjord at around 10 p.m., deciding to carry it out with his own destroyer, HMS Cossack. Halvorsen, having his order to use force rescinded, held Vian at the entrance to the fjord. Vian stated what his orders were to Halvorsen, who was thoroughly convinced that there were no prisoners on board Altmark. Apparently, word from the 2nd Naval District hadn't reached the 1st. Halvorsen asked for 10 minutes to examine the German ship. After having gone back and forth arguing, Vian and Halverson agreed that Halverson be present on board Cossack as an observer when the British conducted the search. Dow, realizing that Cossack was now coming to search his ship, did two things. He used Altmark searchlights in an attempt to dazzle Cossack's bridge crew, and maneuvered the ship in reverse in an attempt to crush Cossack to prevent a boarding. Cossack's helmsman mostly avoided Altmark, and the ship came out of the incident with only a glancing blow. The boarding party from Cossack would be led by the First Lieutenant Bradwell Turner, coming aboard at around 11 p.m. In the ensuing firefight with the lightly armed German sailors, anywhere from 4 to 7 were killed, with several others wounded. Finding the cargo hatch, Turner threw it open and asked, "Are there any Englishmen down there?" Hearing the reply, he said, "Then come on up, the Navy's here." In total, 299 men were rescued from the Altmark. Cossack returned to the United Kingdom in the coming days with the rescued prisoners, yet at what cost? When the shooting first began, Halverson had left Cossack to protest this action and reported British seamen firing on the German crew as they were fleeing over the ice. Norway protested the British action, and the British dismissed the Norwegian protest, while the Germans, and especially Hitler, according to World War II at Sea, A Global History, left Hitler furious over the violation of Norway's neutrality by the British. Not only that, but Hitler was indignant at the Norwegian government for failing to live up to their obligations as neutrals, and there were to be consequences. Well, I hope you all have enjoyed this look at the Altmark incident. I know there are some very complicated topics regarding international law, and I took my best stab at it. I hope I got it right for the most part. Not only that, but I would like to say that when researching this, almost every source I used had some contradicting information on timing or otherwise. For the most part, for dates and specific details, I used Hitler's preemptive war, the Battle for Norway, 1940, as it seemed to be the best source for the subject. If there is any conflicting information and I am mistaken about something, please do tell me in the comments. Also, there are some reports that during the boarding action, sailors used swords. For that, I would point to Dr. Clark's video on the Altmark incident, as he explains his views on it. Finally, I want to get it out in a video that I have a Patreon. For those who don't know, I'm a full-time university student. With the books, editing software, and the assets for the channel like some of the maps I use, this is a relatively expensive hobby. I'm hoping to help curb some of those costs through Patreon. Now, by no means should you feel obligated to help the channel financially. Creating videos for y'all is a joy and a pleasure, but for those who want to help the channel, please check it out as there are several bonuses. It will be pinned in the comments and in the description. Until next time, my friends, please remember to like and subscribe as it'll help the channel to grow. Have a great day.